Well, I have some really interesting things to share with you about the biblical month of Nissan, which began March 30th. And there's a lot of miraculous events that happened, of course, during the month of Nissan. So I just kind of want to go over some of these exciting details with you, because the Hebrew month of Nissan corresponds to March, April on the civil calendar. It's the first month in the Jewish calendar, and actually it is known as the month of redemption. So when we're thinking about the resurrection of the dead and going up to meet the Lord in the rapture in the glory cloud, the month of redemption would be a great month for that to happen, don't you think? And because it marks the Israelites' exodus from Egypt, as we know, which is commemorated during Passover. But here's a more detailed look at Nissan. Nissan's significance is that it is considered the king of months and is associated with liberation and new beginnings. The most prominent event in Nissan, of course, is Passover, known as Pesach in Hebrew, which commemorates the Israelites' miraculous escape from slavery in Egypt. And of course, this would be a great month for us to escape. Pray that you be worthy to escape and to be taken up in the rapture event out of what is our oppressive Egypt, which is this world. The Torah designates Nissan as the first month of the year, marking the start of the Jewish calendar, and Nissan is also associated with other significant events, such as the birth and passing of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Haman's decree, and the overturning of Sodom. Nissan is a powerful season of redemption, and the rabbis teach, get this, that the Messiah will come during this month. Let me just reread that, because that is so cool. Nissan is a powerful season of redemption, and the rabbis teach that the Messiah will come during this month. Yom HaAliyah, or Aliyah Day, is an Israeli national holiday celebrated annually on the 10th of the Hebrew month of Nissan to commemorate the Jewish people entering the land of Israel. So they would have entered the promised land. So maybe we'll enter the heavenly promised land. Some sources refer to Nissan as Kodesh HaYeshua, meaning month of salvation. And of course, that's the meaning of the Messiah Yeshua's name, Yeshua, salvation, both in terms of the physical deliverance from Egypt and the spiritual deliverance through the Messiah. So not only do we have the month of Nissan that we're now in being called the month of redemption, the month of salvation, but remember my videos prior when the Lord was revealing to me about that it was the night of watching when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he told the disciples to watch. He told them 3 times and then told them to sleep on because he knew they would die and that he would have to come again. And this is Passover night, which would be April 12th in the evening. Sometimes we've had the red blood moon, which happened in April. I think it was 4/4/14, and I filmed that one right over my home. And now we know that I don't have a home, so something good didn't happen there. But in 2025, the Hebrew month of Nissan, the first month of the Jewish calendar, began on March 30th and corresponds to the period of March-April on the Gregorian calendar. And here's a more detailed breakdown. Here, Nissan is the first month of the Hebrew year 5785. Gregorian dates, Nissan corresponds to March-April on the Gregorian calendar. The first day of Nissan falls on March 30th, 2025. Passover, which commemorates the exodus from Egypt, falls within the month of Nissan. Rosh Chodesh Nissan, the minor holiday marking the beginning of the month, occurs on March 30th. and religious significance, Nisan is a significant month in the Jewish tradition, with Passover being the most prominent holiday celebrated during this time. So they were saved and rescued out of their slavery and bondage. And we are in a type of bondage on this earth, being believers, but we're not destined for this world. We're destined for going to be with the Lord. So here are some major Jewish and biblical events in history in the month of Nisan. On Nisan 1, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were born and passed away in the month of Nisan, which is recorded in the Jewish Talmud. The tabernacle was inaugurated. Jewish calendar inaugurated in 1313 BCE, and the death of Nadab and Abihu. On the 7th of Nisan, Israelites prepare to enter Canaan. Nisan 10, Miriam's passing, and the Israelites crossed the Jordan River. So maybe we'll cross over. I told you about what I wrote in my book about that we will cross over on the Passover, which is like a highway above another highway where one of them stays on the level that they are and the other one goes up. The people go up and pass over. So that's something from my book, The Almond Tree, Aaron's Rod, the Messiah, King of Israel. But on the 13th of Nisan was Haman's decree in 357 BC. And the 14th of Nisan, which lands on April 12th in the evening and goes through April 20th in the evening, is Passover, Pesach, the original Passover Seder meal, which was Jesus' Last Supper, or Yeshua's Last Supper. Nisan 15 began the Omer count, the covenant between the parts in Genesis 15. Abraham battled the 4 kings. Isaac was born. Jacob wrestled with the angel. Moses at the burning bush. The Exodus began. Queen Vashti was executed. And Daniel was in the lion's den. On Nisan 16, Sodom was overturned. The manna ended. And Levi was born. Nisan 21st, Moses assumed the mission of taking the children of Israel out of Egypt. The Red Sea parted, and Moses errantly struck the rock. On Nisan 28, Jericho's wall collapses in 1273 BC. Now, the Jewish website Aish records the astral sign of Nisan is the lamb. Lambs graze in a flock, faithfully following the shepherd. Being a follower is sometimes a mature choice, so we chose to follow God. We also came to realize that no amount of autonomous political action would bring us the spiritual freedom that we craved, and we finally humbled ourselves to acknowledge that the only possible way we'd ever get out of Egypt would be by God's mercy. Something within us moved enough for us to follow God into the desert and later accept his Torah. We were like lambs that finally discovered the shepherd who cares for them. How appropriate that the liberation from Egypt took place in the month of the Lamb. And Jesus died on the cross because he was the Lamb of God. Nisan is referred to in the Torah by 3 names, each one of which opens a door to a deeper understanding. 1, it's the first month. The month of redemption is considered even greater than Tishrei. The month of that, the universe came into being. The world was created with a purpose, which is that we humans imbue it with purpose in order to rectify ourselves individually and the world at large. Nisan is the month of which our people emerged with this goal as their national definition. 2, it's known as Aviv, and this name means spring, the time when the physical and spiritual messages of rebirth meet with blossom. Nisan is the 3rd thing it's called. Although this name is technically of Babylonian origin, the Aramaic word Nisan is related to the Hebrew word Nitzan, meaning bud. In Song of Songs, King Solomon's epic poem, in which he depicts the love that bonds us to God's redemption, is symbolically referred to as the time that the buds were seen in our land, which means that the inarticulate earth gave birth to a people who would soon flower. Well, if you know anything about my book, The Almond Tree, Aaron's Rod, the Messiah, King of Israel, it's all about a miracle that took place when I had a revelation, and I sent it there to Jerusalem, and the person responded believing that Yeshua is the Messiah because someone took her very much by the arm to a budding tree that's on the front cover of my book. And it's all such a miracle. So this kind of is exciting in regards to this. Besides Passover, other days in Nissan carry deep significance. The first day of Nissan marks the inauguration of the Mishkan, the portable tabernacle that accompanied the Jewish people during 40 years of wandering in the desert. The Mishkan served as a visual allegory of how the macrocosm and microcosm can both be transformed as a sanctuary for God. In the Mishkan, each vessel, material, and metal was carefully selected to symbolize specific ways in which the animal, vegetable, and mineral worlds can be uplifted. Years later, the first of Nisan was when the Jews of the Babylonian exile began their return to Israel. The buds had begun to blossom. Amazingly, Nisan is the time when Jews make a special blessing over new blossoms. Upon the first sighting of the new blossoms of fruit of trees at the start of spring, the following blessing is recited. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, for nothing is lacking in his universe, and he created within it good creatures and trees with which to provide pleasure to mankind. The first of Nisan is also the time that most congregations begin their fundraising campaign for Kimsha da Pisha, literally flour for Passover. No Jew can fully experience the freedom of these days while in isolation. The Exodus was the liberation of an entire nation, not of any one individual. No one is free when he knows that his fellow Jew doesn't have what he needs. In earlier times, the rabbi of the town had the legal authority to mandate contributions. And while this is no longer the case, the underlying premise hasn't changed, that true freedom comes from giving, not taking. Shabbat Hagadol. When God created the world, his plan was that we choose to know him. When we internalize his presence by choosing goodness, in a certain sense, we receive the greatest gift of all, which is himself. The way that God challenged us was by requiring each family to take a sheep, an important symbol in the pantheon of pagan belief that characterized ancient Egypt, and each family tied the sheep to their bedposts for 4 days, and then offered it as a sacrifice to God. The day they took the sheep was Shabbat, the 10th of Nisan. We see this day as the beginning of the redemption, for it is on this day that we followed God's instructions to later slaughter the sheep, even at the risk of enraging our Egyptian captors. But our trust in God made this act possible. On Shabbat Hagadol, it is a well-established custom to read those sections of the Haggadah that deal with the miracles of the liberation, i.e., from we were slaves until you brought us to the temple to atone for our transgressions. And it's also a custom for the rabbi of every synagogue to deliver a major sermon on this Shabbat. Bedekat Hametz. The deadline for removing all leavened, inflated food from one's house is the evening one day prior to the Seder. The idea of ridding our homes of Hametz is that it is a tool to simultaneously rid ourselves of its spiritual counterpart, egotism. Egocentricity is the source of all evil, and God infused these times with the spiritual power to destroy the ego's grip on our personalities. Getting ready for this night requires quite a bit of physical and spiritual preparedness. For some people, Passover cleaning begins at least a month before the holiday arrives, and they spend days removing every trace of leavened food from the home, sometimes getting involved with general spring cleaning and possibly even a tad of redecorating or painting. It is important to realize that the religious requirements are relatively simple, and in situations where doing a great deal of cleaning is just not feasible. It is best to stick to the basics. The focus should be on doing God's will, getting rid of leavened food and negating the ego. So this is what Jesus was doing. If you don't know this is so cool, that when he drove out the money changers just before Passover, he was getting the leaven out of his Father's house. The climax of our search for chametz is our stating that whatever chametz is in our possession is now considered to be as ownerless as the dust of the earth. And the next day, the 10 pieces of bread plus any residual chametz must be destroyed. And as you sit down to the Passover Seder to relive the enslavement and the Exodus, you will eat the matzah and drink the wine. And these are tools to help you write your own personal story of redemption, added to the millions of stories that are part of our unwritten history. May we all merit to see the buds of Nissan blossom into full and genuine redemption. And may we spend the next Passover Seder together in a free and rebuilt Jerusalem. So to sum this up, Nissan is the month of many miracles. It is the month of redemption, the month of watching for the redemption, and being in the Garden of Gethsemane and being told to watch. And then 3 days and 3 nights later, guess what happened? Jesus was resurrected from death to life, and those that were in their graves that believed came out and were resurrected and seen in town by thousands of people that knew them already. So the resurrection of the dead took place, and so you're supposed to stay up at night, that night watching, stay awake, stay alert, and pay attention all through the Passover, and the resurrection happened. So will this be the time of the resurrection rapture of believers? We're pondering. We have the month of the redemption, the night of watching, the month of the Lamb, and the month of salvation. So Yeshua brought salvation as Yeshua, the meaning of his name, as the Lamb, and told his disciples to watch. All of it comes together and is so beautiful, and the time of the buds coming out, springing forth to life. And of course, we just had the blood moon, known as the worm moon, which means that the worms start moving around in the soil, which causes the plants to rise up out of the ground and come to life. So these are really interesting things about the month of Nissan, the month of redemption, the night of watching, and the time of the resurrection of the dead, and the flowering and budding, coming to life. I really think this is very exciting news, and it's important to know these things. Be blessed and keep looking up, because our redemption draweth nigh. Good night, everybody.